Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Published in installments between 1837 and 1838, Oliver Twist marks the ultimate success of Charles Dickens as a writer, and it's an early example of the social novel. Oliver is a foundling in England of the mid-1800s who grows up in a suburban orphanage where he suffers from hunger and abuses of any kind until he's hired by a funeral home. He's abused even there, so he escapes and reaches London, where he joins a gang of thieves led by the old villain Fagin. The novel portrays some unforgettable characters of English literature: the evil Fagin, Sikes the murderer, Nancy the prostitute, and superbly describes the struggle for survival of the young Oliver and the other characters. The authoritarian nature of the English institutions, violence against children, and social injustices in the urban England are the social criticism at the base of the work of Dickens. The novel can be interpreted as a criticism of the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834 that wanted to lift the municipal districts from the burden of taking care of the poor, transferring them into structures similar to factories, workhouses, in which even children of the same age as Oliver were required to work. The Oliver Twist style fits perfectly to serialization, very common at the time and already tested by Dickens for the Pickwick Papers. The author narrates in the third person with a frequent use of comments, sketching out his characters with an irony close to caricature. His style is simple but effective and extremely engaging, full of big scenes, unexpected twists, suspense and a happy end that wins over the public. Oliver Twist.
The walls and ceiling of the room were perfectly black with age and dirt. There was a deal table before the fire, upon which were a candle stuck in a ginger beer bottle, 2 or 3 pewter pots, a loaf and butter, and a plate. In a frying pan which was on the fire, and which was secured to the mantel-shelf by a string, some sausages were cooking, and standing over them, with a toasting fork in his hand, was a very old shrivelled Jew, whose villainous-looking and repulsive face was obscured by a quantity of matted red hair. He was dressed in a greasy flannel gown, with his throat bare, and seemed to be dividing his attention between the frying-pan and the clothes-horse, over which a great number of silk handkerchiefs were hanging. Several rough beds, made of old sacks, were huddled side by side on the floor. Seated round the table were 4 or 5 boys, none older than the Dodger, smoking long clay pipes and drinking spirits with the air of middle-aged men. These all crowded about their associate as he whispered a few words to the Jew, and then turned round and grinned at Oliver. So did the Jew himself, toasting fork in hand. "This is him, Fagin," said Jack Dawkins, "my friend Oliver Twist." The Jew grinned, and, making a low obeisance to Oliver, took him by the hand, and hoped he should have the honour of his intimate acquaintance. Upon this, the young gentleman with the pipes came round him, and shook both his hands very hard, especially the one in which he held his little bundle. One young gentleman was very anxious to hang up his cap for him, and another was so obliging as to put his hands in his pockets, in order that, as he was very tired, he might not have the trouble of emptying them himself when he went to bed. These civilities would probably be extended much further, but for a liberal exercise of the Jew's toasting fork on the heads and shoulders of the affectionate youths who offered them.
"We are very glad to see you, Oliver, very," said the Jew. "Dodger, take off the sausages, and draw a tub near the fire for Oliver. Ah, you're a-staring at the pocket handkerchiefs, eh, my dear? There are a good many of 'em, ain't there? We've just looked 'em out, ready for the wash. That's all, Oliver, that's all."
The latter part of his speech was hailed by a boisterous shout from all the hopeful pupils of the merry old gentleman, in the midst of which they went to supper. Oliver ate his share, and the Jew then mixed him a glass of hot gin and water, telling him he must drink it off directly, because another gentleman wanted the tumbler. Oliver did as he was desired. Immediately afterwards, he felt himself gently lifted on to one of the sacks, and then he sunk into a deep sleep.